All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the What's Poppin' podcast. I'm your host, Josh Ho. With me today is Natalie, Wozny, Amelia, Zollner. And today we're going to talk about a new film that came out over the Christmas break. Greta Gerwig's adaptation of Louisa May Alcott's novel, Little Women. So, what are our initial thoughts on the movie?
I really liked it, like, the entire time during the movie. I liked it a lot. The entire time, I, felt like something big was going to happen during the end. So I was kind of, waiting for it to, roll into, something bigger. And it did. So I just enjoyed the entire movie.
For sure. I've always hated period pieces and historical themed movies, but for some reason I just really loved Little Woman, partially because I kind of identified with Jo, the main character. And I also loved, it was really surprisingly hilarious at times. I did not expect that at all, and it was really great.
Definitely. And as you were saying how it's a period piece, it takes place in the 1800s, right in the aftermath of the Civil War. But one thing that struck me was how modern all the dialogue felt. A lot of the lines were taken right from the book, which was written 150 years ago.
Wow.
But the way that Greta directed the actors, the way the actors delivered the lines, it felt extremely modern. I'd have to agree. I loved it a lot. Big fan of Greta Gerwig's directorial debut, Lady Bird.
For sure.
And it reminded me a lot of that same actors, Saoirse Ronan and Timothée Chalamet, Tracy Letts. So I think it was really great. Now, in terms of age, this movie is PG. I don't want to watch a lot of PG movies just because they're not really my target demographic interests. But this movie was rated PG. Do you think it's, appropriate for that? I felt like it was a little mature for, a 7-year-old. I don't think they'd understand it, but...
I feel like there wasn't anything in there that was, inappropriate, if that makes sense, because usually, movies I feel like are rated PG-13 because there's, something, Scandi or something like that. So I feel like maybe that's why it was rated PG, because there wasn't anything in there like that. But if, a 7-year-old went to go see it, they would not be interested. They'd literally just, walk. There's no point of, a younger child seeing it, because I feel like they would just get disinterested, if that makes sense. So maybe it should be, rated PG-13 just to, target, a audience, an older audience, just for that reason, because, someone younger wouldn't enjoy it, if that makes sense.
I agree, yeah. If I had gone to see this, even 5 years ago or something, I would have been so disinterested. I would not have cared about it. But I think obviously rating systems are there, just to provide guidance for, what you should be able, or when you should be able to see something, what age you should be. And I think, if a younger kid did want to see this, it is, a great coming-of-age movie. So it would be kind of cool, if you were, a mom and you wanted to take, your preteen or something to go see Little Woman, it would be kind of fun to go, with family or something, I feel.
I definitely agree with that. And I think part of the reason I wouldn't recommend letting a younger kid see it is because of the way Greta chooses to tell the story with the alternate timelines. She starts at the end or towards the end when the Little Women are adults, and then cuts back and forth. There are previous adaptations of the movie or the book Little Women. There's a movie in 94, a couple movies back then that tell it in a chronological order. Mm-hmm. And people were saying before the movie came out, why do we need another Little Women? But then they realized that the way Greta tells it, it's different, it's unique. She takes the two storylines and draws parallels, so that it really enhances the performance. But I think that could lose a few younger viewers. I know I definitely got lost in the first 5 minutes. Wait, where are they? Are they adults? Are they kids?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they look so they didn't make them really look that much younger.
Yeah.
When they were playing the adults and the kids, but and they didn't do that much to make it different, because I feel in some movies they'll change the I feel they change the I don't know how to put this, the colors, or if that makes sense, I feel they change the scenery a lot, so that you could tell between the two time periods of when they're younger and older. And I feel they didn't do that much because it was the same settings a lot of the time. So it was a little bit confusing in the very beginning, but I feel you caught on to it pretty quickly when you they started explaining the characters and things like that.
Definitely with the colors, you bring that up. I saw it a second time, and I did notice they did play with the colors, but it was very subtle. So in the past, everything would be orange and gold tinting, kind of warm,
really?
The memories. In the present, it would be very cold, lots of blues, because, adulthood kind of sucks. But it was very subtle that I didn't pick it up till my second viewing.
Yeah, I didn't pick it up like right away, so that's probably
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, did either of you two read the book before you watched the movie?
Nope.
No.
Me neither.
Okay, well,
And going into it, people are like, you can't spoil the movie because it's in a book. People know the story, but I didn't know the story going into it. So I'm like, what's going to happen?
yeah, I
What's
didn't know.
gonna
I had
happen?
no clue.
And do you feel like it still worked even though the book...
That I didn't read the book.
Yeah.
I liked it almost more that I didn't know the story at all going into it, because like I just like I had no clue what was going to happen, and so the ending was like just really surprising to me because I couldn't, like, I remember like halfway through the movie, I feel like I was even talking to one of you guys. I think I was like texting you guys, and I was like, I have no clue how this is gonna end with a happy ending.
Yeah.
I was like, there's no way that like this is gonna resolve like well. So it was nice because it was like a lot of like twists and things like that throughout the movie, and also like it was like so relatable, like, if that makes sense. Even though like you mentioned it was like a period piece, I feel like they made it so modern, and like it wasn't even just to like, because I felt myself like relating to Joe a lot, but like I also felt myself relating to Amy too, so it was like kind of like relating between the two of them throughout the movie. Like it was just like multiple characters, like you could see like bits of yourself or like for me at least, in like a lot of the different characters, which like that also like I feel like that's why it would be better for an older audience, because like you wouldn't be able to like have the same like connection if you were younger, if you were watching it when you're younger.
For sure. I also had not read the book, and I think reading it before would have given me like a better appreciation. Like I would have been able to like understand when it kind of jumped around a little more. Also, one thing that really annoyed me, I'm kind of gonna like divert a little bit, but people, like, everybody in the movie theater was talking, like, I was just kind of overhearing conversations, like, everybody had really read the book before, and people kind of, like, expected everybody to have read the book, and so, like, the lady next to me, like, during the middle of the movie, she was, like, really loud, she was, like, talking about, like, what was gonna happen next, and I was so annoyed, because, like, I didn't know, I hadn't read the book,
Yeah.
and I feel like that's kind of a weird thing to assume. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, only, like, see Little Women if you read the book. And it's kind of, like, gatekeeping almost. Like, people are saying you shouldn't see it if you never, like, loved the book. I hate
That did
that.
not happen to me. My movie theater, or where I went to see it, it was, like, dead silent.
Really?
Yeah, that did
Man,
not
I
happen.
envy that. To the viewers, listeners, don't talk during a movie.
Yeah.
It's kind of a jerk move. But yeah, I think that really speaks to a sort of generational divide, because most people, like, back in the day, they had to read Little Women for school, but I don't think we did. I think that's previous generations, like our parents, our grandparents had to read it. It was kind of a staple of American culture, but not so much anymore. So I think this is a nice way to reintroduce the story to a newer generation.
Yeah.
And so we haven't spoiled it so far, but we're going to dive into our spoiler section right now. So if you haven't seen the movie, turn it off, come back when you're done. If you have seen the movie, continue on with us. Our first question for the spoiler section is, what is your favorite character? Or I guess before we do that, since there are 4 main Little Women, let's rank the Little Women from least favorite to favorite, even though they're all great.
Yeah.
They're all wonderful.
But, okay. So I was kind of torn between, like, even though, like, you shouldn't pick sides, I feel like I was, like, picking sides between Amy and Joe the entire time, like, in my head. And, like, in the end, I feel like I, like, would pick Joe over Amy. So then I'd go Joe, Amy,
The one that dies or Emma Watson?
Emma Watson, then the one that dies.
That's
Poor
sad.
Beth. Justice for Beth.
Beth. Okay. So, wait, what's Emma Watson's?
Meg.
Meg, then Beth. Okay.
Okay.
This seems really insensitive, but
Yeah.
fictional
If you
characters.
watch it, you're gonna be like, you're gonna think the same thing.
Yeah. So I would definitely pick Joe as my favorite. I really, like, saw myself in her as, like, a writer. I don't know, I just kind of identified with her a lot. And then I would probably say Amy. Like Natalie, I found myself, like, picking sides too, but I really, like, I don't know why, like, I would be so mad if I was, like, working on a novel and someone just, like, burnt it. Like, that made me so mad, but in the end, like, there's
but I also
something
see
so
why she
lovable. I really don't, but, like, I found that there's something so, like, lovable about Amy. Like, I can't be like, oh, I hate her because she, like, burnt Joe's novel. Like,
But, like,
I couldn't
get
do
it.
that.
She felt like a second choice. Like, I understand why.
Yeah. I don't know.
See, okay, we're
I
gonna
still
just get
wouldn't
into
have done
like
that.
taking.
I know. And then next, I probably liked Beth and then Meg.
Oh really?
I'd have to agree with you two have very similar lists here. I'd have to go Joe, Amy, Beth, and then Meg. I like Emma Watson, but her character is kind of just boring.
Yeah.
She's like obsessed with or wants to aspire to be like rich and have the rich things, and she kind of gets married early on, and she's kind of like, oh, she's got kids, and then she comes back because Beth is dying, and she's just like, oh, that's kind of her whole arc. She doesn't have much of an arc there. Beth was very sweet, portrayed by Eliza Scanlon. She had some very sweet moments, particularly when she was on the beach with Joe.
That's true.
Yeah.
And Joe's like reading to her. She represents like this sort of innocence, this purity, and then
maybe that's why I didn't like it, because I felt like it was like an innocence and a purity, and maybe that's why it was like almost like more boring to me. Like you thought that like Meg was more boring, but I thought that like Beth was more boring.
Mm-hmm. She did have some tender moments with Chris Cooper's character, Mr. Lawrence, when he gives her the piano.
Yeah.
You can see that, but that's not really the focus. The focus of her character is the fact that she's dying.
Yeah,
sort of.
that's why, and I also like I was like, okay.
So it's kind of hard to connect.
Yeah.
And then I related to Joe and Amy, which are the two characters I spend the most time on. Kind of flip back and forth. I see myself in both of them. But yeah, what were your thoughts on Laurie, Timothée Chalamet, his character?
He's so fine. Anyways, besides that though, okay, so I liked him a lot, like in the beginning, and then at some point I was like, when he like asked Amy to marry him, I was like a little skeptical, because I was like, really, dude? Like I feel like I was like, okay, like you just want a wife, but then at the same time, I like started to understand a little bit more, because I was like, he's probably not doing, like, I think he actually cared for her, and, like, he probably actually did get over Joe. Like, he was explaining it to her. He was like, this is, like, different. Like, I loved her, like, in a different way than, like, he loved, like, Amy. So, like, I like, ultimately, like, I really liked his character, and I feel like he played him so well. Actually, the entire cast, I feel like, was casted very well. Like, everyone fit their parts very
It's literally like the perfect cast.
Yeah,
Meryl
yeah.
Streep.
Yeah, everyone
Laura
was just
Dern.
so well casted.
It's
so.
crazy, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Natalie. I was kind of thrown off a little by like how often he switched between his like love interests. It kind of felt like it was like very jumpy, and I was kind of like, do I trust this guy?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to feel about him. But I felt like he was like a really good, even like friend to all of the like little women, I guess. Like they had that scene where they were in like, I don't know where they were, like the attic or something, and they had like the little club, and he like jumped out. That was so funny to me. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, he really brought like, he was kind of representative of the viewer, because he's kind of observing the March sisters from the outside, and you kind of feel like it's just him in the giant mansion with Mr. Lawrence, and I guess the tutor kind of hung with them. Yeah. So he's kind of lonely.
Like, he was lonely
there.
He just wanted to be a part of it.
And you can see when he brings home Joe and Meg from the dance, and that's his first introduction to the family, and you can see the look in his eyes that, like, he wants to be a part of it. Yeah. So that's why I felt like there's been discussion about this. You touched on it, if Joe actually loved Amy, or if he just really wanted to be a part of the March family. Because he couldn't have Joe. Yeah. Joe rejected him. Beth is dead. Yeah. Meg is married. So Amy's sort of like the last resort. Yeah. But I did feel like he did love her in the end. But part of that makes me feel like, is it just to get with the family? And I also sensed a hint of jealousy when the Professor Bayer comes in. Yeah. And he's like, who is this guy? Yeah. I feel like he's still kind of protective of Joe there.
I mean, like, I feel like you, like, can't let go of it. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, he would still, like, be curious about it, but I feel like, because he like, there was just, like, one line where he said to her, like, I'm always, like, gonna, like, love her, but it's, like, in a different way. Yeah. Yeah. So, like, that, like, made more sense to me, like, when he said that, like, oh, like, then maybe, like, it isn't just him, like, it's not, like, completely just to, like, get with the March.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that. Now, moving on to, like, our favorite scenes. You touched on a few scenes that stood out, but the way the story is told is it's in flashbacks, little moments, much like Lady Bird. So there are, like, a billion scenes. Which scenes, like, really stuck out to you?
Go ahead.
You can go.
Oh, wow. Switching it up.
Yeah.
I really so I'm always a big fan of opening scenes that like tell you a lot about a character. And I just found myself to be like a really big fan of the opening scene in Little Woman. It was like where she's at the publisher and she's trying to get her work published, but she's like referring to herself like as a friend. She's like, oh, my friend wrote this. Like, how much would you pay or whatever? And I thought that was kind of cool just to see. It kind of showed like in the end like how much she grew and like her writing and everything.
Okay, I think I liked the beach scene, like the first one, not just with Beth and Joe, but when they were all at the beach together, I liked that a lot because I feel like they were all, like, it was just like one of the moments where they all, like, they have so much, like, on their plates, and, like, I feel like in that moment, like, they were all actually, like, happy and they could let go of everything, like, and it was just, like, really beautifully, like, filmed and everything, like, I think they all, like, could, like, let go of everything, so it was just, like, a really happy moment, and also when Joe and Meg went to, like, the first, like, it was like a ball when they first met Lori. I really liked that scene. Like, just the costumes were gorgeous. Mm-hmm. So like it was just really visually pleasing, that scene. And also, sorry, I'm just like jumping all over. I'm saying like a bunch of scenes, but and they're all like different. But when she actually rejected Lori, I liked that scene. I don't know. It was just really like I feel like their acting was so good there, and like. It was just very, like, real, I feel like. It was so, like, bare. I don't know if that makes any sense, but...
I mean, Saoirse Ronan and Timothée Chalamet have an undeniable
Yeah, they're just,
chemistry.
like, chemistry was just so
Every
good.
time they're on screen together, like, I'm locked in, ready to see what happens next, because they have a very...
It was, like, really intense.
Yeah, so that scene was probably, like, the standout scene where I'm like, wow, that's just really sad, but you kind of...
Yeah, it was, like, it was sad.
But you get where both characters are coming from.
Yeah, exactly.
You
so
understand
like,
why Joe had to do it.
Yeah.
And she was being, like... She was being selfless in a way by doing that because she didn't want to hurt him, and that was really sweet.
For sure.
And we've talked about our scenes. Now, what do you think worked? But I feel like a lot of stuff worked. I had trouble finding out
I don't know what didn't work.
Do we just want to go to what didn't work?
Yeah.
Okay. I have like a little nitpick, but I'll let you guys go first.
You can go first because
Okay. My only nitpick is I said this yesterday in our group text. Casting Bob Odenkirk as the dad, because they set up Mr. March as this sort of reveal. The whole time they're longing for their dad. Like, how's dad doing? Is he in the war?
Yeah.
The dad's sick. They want to see their dad. There are some lovely scenes where Laura Dern, or who plays Barmy, is reading letters, and all the girls are resting on her, like, listening for their dad. And then the dad comes home, and it's Bob Odenkirk. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Bob Odenkirk, but he plays Saul in Better Call Saul Breaking Bad, sort of like this really scummy sort of lawyer dude.
Oh, okay.
That's
and
weird.
He's also a comedian. So when he comes on, I'm like, wow, it's Bob Odenkirk. When it's supposed to be a really powerful, like, oh, it's Mr. March. The family's all back together. It's really sweet. And I did get that. It just took me out for 5 seconds. And that's the only thing that I can say didn't really work for me.
I don't know the actor, but like touching on like the whole Mr. March situation, I feel like it was just a little confusing. Like, that was the only part that actually did confuse me because I was confused. Like, did the dad actually come home? Like, was it just, like, I understood that they were reading the letters, but I feel like it was just a little sudden. Like, I was a little, like, lost. Like, I didn't know if he stayed back with them. Like, I feel like he was kind of, like, appearing and then not appearing.
Yeah.
Maybe it was because of the flashbacks.
The flashbacks.
But... like, the flashbacks didn't confuse me that much, like, especially towards the end. Like, I understood when it was, like, going back and forth. But just, like, the dad situation was, like, I feel like they touched on it, but, like, they weren't touching on it enough. Or, like, just, like, that could have been more clear.
It was kind of in the background.
Yeah, it was in the background. And so, like, it just was, it could have been clearer.
Yeah.
My thing that I kind of didn't like about Little Woman was that when it like jumps around, I always get confused when movies do this unless it's like it's like a different actor who represents like the younger like character. And I don't know, Little Woman, like I didn't really pick up on the different, like you talked about how there were like different color schemes kind of. I never really picked up on that. Like I noticed that it was happening, but I didn't, for some reason I didn't like associate it with like the change in time. So I kind of wish they made that a little bit more obvious, and then I feel like I would have been able to enjoy it more. But otherwise I feel like everything like really worked for me.
All right, one thing I want to mention is the ending, because you two have mentioned it's kind of confusing. I was a little confused at first, like right after the movie ended, I googled Little Women ending explained to try to figure out what happened. So the way it ends is there are two endings sort of that they kind of converge. So Joe's character marries Professor Frederick Bayer in the ending, but then they cut to the opening scene where, or not the opening scene, but like the same location where Joe is trying to sell the book to the publisher, and the publisher's like, what happened? Well, she's like, she didn't marry either of them. And he's like, what's going on? Like, the woman has to marry the guy at the end, because that's what traditionally happens in the books. And then Joe's like, fine, I'll do it.
And then she gets married. Yeah, I was a little confused.
And then she gets married.
But it's like, I almost disregarded the fact that it was confusing because I wanted her to marry him. So I was like,
you just
okay,
ignored that part of the movie?
Yeah, I ignored the fact that it was confusing because I was like, I wanted it to be a happy ending. And like, it would have been also a happy ending if she didn't marry him, but I feel like because she like had that scene where she cried, I don't remember if she cried, but she like freaked out to her mom about the fact that she was so lonely, and like it was like, oh my, and that's why
I'm acting in that scene.
I know,
so phenomenal.
good. I know, so that's why I was like, I really wanted her to like, and you could tell that she was like kind of like, I don't know if she was I don't know if I would say she was in love with him, but she was like kind of like fascinated with him.
Yeah.
And so like I wanted her to like marry him and just like have the like person. So like I was like kind of just disregard the fact that the ending was confusing, and I was like, okay, just marry him. So
I kind of felt the opposite way. Like, I know in the end, she kind of ended up wanting to, like, not be lonely anymore. She kind of, like, wanted to be with somebody. But I don't know. I feel like, especially for, like, a novel written in, when was it written? Like, the 1800s or something like that. Like, I feel like for a novel written back then, like, Little Woman would have been pretty, like, progressive, I feel like. Because it's, like, all the marriages seem to be, like, very unsatisfying. Like, it's not like it's, like, the climax of the book or anything, and I kind of wanted it to take like that almost like feminism-ish turn where it's like, oh, like she doesn't get married at the end, like she can be like independent and like write books or whatever. But I mean, I was fine with it because she seemed to be happy.
But the thing is, like, I feel like it still took that stance. Like the rest of the book, like it was still her like taking that stance. Like I don't feel like she married him to be dependent on him, if that makes any, like, if that, like, she wasn't marrying him for, like, his money or to have a husband. Like, she still was, like, doing her own path.
That's true.
So, like, I feel like it was, like, a different situation.
I think a lot of that is also found in Amy's arc, because she's supposed to marry that other guy.
Yeah.
But then Laurie's like, I love you.
And she chose
to.
Yeah.
But and he's like, why don't you just marry me? Why are you marrying this rich guy? And then she has that speech in her, like, painter studio where she says that marriage is an economic proposition in that time, and how, as a woman, there's no way to make your own money. Yeah. So you have to marry rich. But the way that Amy gets to choose who she gets to marry is kind of like it is feminism, but just not like, it doesn't beat you over the head with its themes, which is what I love.
Exactly.
It feels natural and part of the story. So in terms of the ending and dissecting it, because there's also the alternate ending where she doesn't get married, and then you see her like printing the book. It's a nod to Louisa May Alcott, who wrote Little Women. She wrote the story based off of her life, and in her life she died like really young and never married. So it's kind of a way that, like, Joe becomes Louisa May Alcott in the end. It's a way to honor her legacy, sort of. I feel like the way the movie handled it could have handled that a little bit better, been more clear to let the audience know what's happening, but I think that's what Greta was trying to get across with the ending. Now, it is January 14th. It is Oscar season. Plenty of awards, plenty of anger. I'm kind of angry. This did get nominated for 6 awards, including Best Picture, Best Adapted Screenplay, and a couple other awards, but noticeably no Best Director for Greta Gerwig. Now, what are your thoughts? Do you think this deserved Best Director? Do you think it's deserving all the hype it's getting?
Yeah, I mean, it was really good. I couldn't pick out a lot of flaws, so.
Yeah, I really think Greta Gerwig got like snubbed because she really took Little Women and made it like, as you were saying, like people were wondering, oh, why are there all these new adaptations? Like we don't need another Little Woman, but she really like took it and made it her own, and I think she definitely deserves at least like a nod or a nomination for Best Director, but she didn't get it, and I'm really sad about that.
It's funny how we're complaining that she's not getting a Best Director nomination when this is only her second movie she's ever made.
Yeah.
In her first movie, Lady Bird, she did get a Best Director nomination, so it seems kind of trivial to argue why isn't this new filmmaker getting like one of the biggest awards ever as that camera dies.
Oh no.
It's okay, we're wrapping up. It'll be fine. Let me just segue. Now, as we end, I love Lady Bird so much. It's probably my third favorite movie of all time. How do you feel this compares? Which one do you like better?
I feel like I liked this more because it was more like complex, I feel like. Like Lady Bird was more like relatable because it was more modern, and obviously like this is based on a book, so it's different because it wasn't an original story.
I would have to say that I prefer Lady Bird. I don't know, it's just that movie like really, it was just really like one of my all-time favorites for me. I don't think like Little Woman was really far off, like it's definitely up there on my list, but Lady Bird, I just can't like compare other movies to that, I feel like.
I think I'm with Amelia on this one. I don't know. Little Women does feel more universal, like the ultimate coming-of-age movie, because there's so many more characters that go through arcs that you feel like each character reveals like a different part of growing up.
Yeah.
Whereas Lady Bird, it is more singular in that it is about Lady Bird's transition to adulthood. I personally found it more relatable in that sense, but I can see why you would like Little Women better, and like they're basically equal. Let's be real here.
Yeah.
Well, Natalie and Amelia, thank you for coming on the podcast. It's always a pleasure. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at What's Poppin' CHN, and we'll see you all next time.